Hello and welcome to Binge Dieting with Betsy Thurston, RD. I am Betsy. And today I am going to be having a conversation with the Chief Medical Officer of an inpatient eating disorder center. So if any of you out there have been struggling a lot with any form of an eating disorder, you might be interested in this conversation. And before I get there, I'll give my 2 or 3 minutes on exactly who I am and what I do. I am a registered dietitian and an eating disorder clinician, and I work with people generally one-on-one over Zoom or in my office outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And I sometimes see people on a weekly basis and sometimes every 2 weeks, and sometimes I only see people once in a while for a check-in or for a handful of sessions just to help point them in the direction of attaining whatever their goal might be. And the goal might be a better or a different relationship with food. It might be weight loss. It might be to stop binge eating. It might be to learn intuitive eating. It might be to gain weight and work with reducing those coping mechanisms of over control and over restricting. So there's all sorts of things that I work with. And sometimes I just work with people and a little bit of diabetes type concerns and things like that. So sometimes after a very short time working with eating concerns, I actually end up working with people on issues that have absolutely nothing to do with food. Because indirectly it does. I oftentimes end up working a lot on concerns regarding relationships, expectations, perfectionism, boundaries, mindfulness, spirituality, trust, control, anger, jealousy, overwhelm. I mean, all sorts of things. Because oftentimes when people have a relationship with food that's disordered, it's not about the food. So that's a little bit about me. And if you're interested in scheduling an appointment or getting more information, go to my website, www.betsythurstonrd.com. And now I am going to get to my interview with the Chief Medical Officer of Alsana. Alrighty, I am sitting here today with Dr. Margherita Mascolo from Alsana Treatment Program. And I really want to dig down into a lot of the specifics of what it means to go to a treatment program, the type of person who might be interested in going or not, and everything about that. And so and she is in Denver, so welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today. This is so great.
Yeah, you are welcome. And I think a lot of my listeners probably have not been to treatment programs or don't know a lot about them or don't think they need to go. So I think I want to talk a little bit about the details of what that looks like. So Alsana is very well respected. I am familiar with this program. I think highly of it, or I wouldn't have had you on my podcast.
Thank you.
And so tell the listeners then about how many centers you have and what and where they are.
Yeah, happy to. Well, so we operate in 3 states. We're in California, Missouri, and Alabama. In California, we have centers in Monterey, Santa Barbara, and Westlake. In Missouri, our centers are in St. Louis, and in Alabama, our centers are in Birmingham. We tend to have smaller programs. Our residential facilities are the majority are 6-bed facilities. We do go up to 20 in some of our other programs. Yep. So California, except Monterey, is 12 beds. All the other California facilities are 6 beds. St. Louis has a 10-bed house and a 20-bed house. In Birmingham, the same. One is up to 6 beds. The other 2 facilities have 6 beds each. So we try and keep smaller milieus for our residential facilities because we want to provide very healing, therapeutic environments. And in all the cities that I mentioned, we have residentials, partial hospitalization programs, and intensive outpatient.
All right, so intensive outpatient, so for people who are listening, so you would go stay at home, and then you go in, 3 days a week, 5 days a week?
3 to 5, depending on the sort of severity of illness and symptoms, anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week. Yep. And what I was going to say, Betsy, too, is during the pandemic, we were actually able to launch a centralized virtual PHP and IOP. And we operate that in our 3 operating states, and additional about 5 states. So the nice thing about that is that clients that live in some of the states we don't have brick and mortars in are able to stay at home and still have programming. Okay. It's been everything we do at Alsana, we track outcomes, and we're very evidence-based and data-driven, and our outcomes have been wonderful for the virtual program, especially for patients that have binge eating.
That have been what?
That have binge eating disorder.
Oh, binge eating.
And bulimia.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. All right. So do you put anorexic clients in the same program, the same space as binge eating? Because generally programs do, right?
We do. Yeah, that's right.
And so what is the percent generally? Or I guess it really depends on the week.
Yeah. I would say hard to tell. I think our top diagnosis is anorexia, followed by OSFED. And I think a lot of sort of binge eating and binge eating behavior sometimes get sort of thrown into the OSFED category.
And that would mean, for my listeners...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, what are you asking what OSFED means?
Yeah, I mean, because people won't understand what that is. Gotcha.
So it's other specified feeding and eating disorders. It's one of the DSM-5 diagnoses for eating disorders.
Right. So anything.
Yeah.
All right. So how does someone know if they need treatment? So I work with people who might have a very dysfunctional relationship with food, and they might just find themselves 3 times a week, or even once a week, going into this headspace of lack of control and overeating. Would that be a person that would qualify as needing a treatment like this?
So someone that has something once a week may not qualify for residential, depending on physically what else is going on. So do they have vital sign instabilities and lab abnormalities? What is their weight? But I think they would have a place between PHP and IOP to really assist with the behaviors and bring down the behaviors and help them have a recovered life.
Okay.
Couple of things that they could do. So the SCOFF questionnaire is a very easy 5-question questionnaire that can help screen for eating disorders. The other thing, on our Alsana website at alsana.com, we have our own sort of app and questionnaire that they can go through to see if they perhaps have an eating disorder and would benefit from treatment.
Okay. And then once suppose they go, how much is individual therapy? How much is group therapy? And what does the day look like?
Yeah, depending on the level of care. So at the residential level of care, there are 3 individual sessions with the therapist per week, and then 2 with the dietitians. Every day they have 6 groups. Most of the groups are after meals to process the meal and what any sort of emotions or issues that have come up with the offered meal.
Okay, so they have a meal. They have how many? 3 meals and a snack or 2 a day, or how?
They actually have 3 meals and 3 snacks per day.
Okay, and do they have to eat them all?
Yes, in the sense of they sit down with the dietitian and they have their individualized meal plan. We like to sort of spread out their caloric needs over the 3 meals and 3 snacks. Mm-hmm. If they don't eat, we have protocols in place to assist them to really understand what's the reason for not eating. Is it they're full, so they're listening to their sort of hunger, satiety cues, or is it a behavior? So we work on those. We offer supplement if they're unable to complete. And we're not a lockdown facility. So if they, if they don't complete it,
they
we
just
do
can
therapeutic
leave, right?
around it. Yeah.
So most of the people that I work with binge eating, if they were honest with themselves and me, they say, I just really want to lose weight. And I think it is probably safe to say that the goal when you go into treatment is not weight loss, it is stabilization. And the idea would be, let's just focus on not having this binge habit. Is that right?
You're 100% correct. So our focus is not on weight loss. Our focus is on the behaviors.
Right.
Right. So as you and your listeners know, part of the binge eating cycle is that they get on restrictive diets, or like, I can never have chocolate, right? And they restrict, and then they have, they sort of binge on chocolate. So what we do is we have our therapists or dietitians work with the clients to really have all foods fit, right? So what is it that you're craving today? Is it chocolate? Okay, you can have chocolate. And working on the behavior piece, what we do see, Betsy, we do see some weight loss, because if you're not binging on, I don't know, cookies and cakes and cupcakes,
right,
right, and are having maybe a cupcake a day, that will lead to weight loss. But we do not focus on that. We work on the behavior.
Right. And I mean, I'll be honest, I have worked with people who've been in programs and they gained weight. At first, they gained weight and they left at a higher weight. However, they also left without their habit. And so they were at a higher weight, but then they could do outpatient work, and over time, you're right, eventually the weight's going to come off.
Exactly.
So, all right, going back to, let's go to the chocolate thing you just gave an example of. Mm-hmm. So the idea would be teaching their brains to not overreact to the chocolate, and giving them the sense that they can actually eat a reasonable portion. Would that be correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And so there would probably be mindful eating and just a lot of somatic work, just somatic, meaning, I know you know what it means, but, to the listeners, sensing the experience in the entire body as the chocolate is in the mouth. So, and you're shaking your head yes, for people can't see you, but I see you. And so what happens when people have an absolute panic over chocolate or any sugar, for example? Mm-hmm. Except when they're binging, well, then they're in the land of the binge. But when they're not in the land of the binge, they have an absolute panic of taking that first bite. So does it help being in the group setting, or do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, no, happy to. The group setting. So, most of the therapeutic work in treatment centers is done in groups, because this is where clients get to see that other people are going through the exact same thing, and they sort of get to learn together how to overcome these emotions and these sensations and the panicking and whatever other feeling they're having. So several things happen. One, our clients eat with our staff. So our staff members, our direct care, eat with the clients. They model sort of portion sizes and healthy eating, and they are there in the moment. So if someone really is unable to complete their meal or is having an anxiety attack over sugar or chocolate, the direct care are able to talk through that with the client in the moment. And then afterwards in the group, they sort of process what happened. So what was the sugar representing for them? Why is it so scary? And we can show them that objectively, like, A, your body needs sugar. B, nothing bad has happened to the body as a result of this, right? And how did it make you feel? Oh, well, the sugar was delicious, so that's good. We'll continue to have it, So this is why it's so helpful for the clients to be in a treatment center when they have these issues, because there's both work that can be done in the moment and then afterwards.
Mm-hmm. So what happens when they don't like the food? So let's talk about that, because you were when we were emailing, there was a little bit about vegan meals and how common it is, which I have found also a lot of people who with eating disorders tend towards vegan. I mean, obviously not everybody. So tell me about that in your
Yeah, so a couple of things. So we, when the clients enter treatment and when they exit, one of our questionnaires is the safe foods scale. So we have a list of foods and they sort of check off which foods feel safe to them. We do it again before they leave treatment, and it's really amazing to see how many more foods they're able to consume when they're done with treatment, which is kind of the whole point of it, right?
Right.
And then, but clients, I mean, I don't like scallops. So clients do get to have foods that they truly dislike. I mean, if someone's never had scallops their whole lives, we're certainly not going to start having them eat scallops. Then I can't remember the exact number of foods that they get to dislike, but there is a number of foods that
and you said I was having a hard time understanding scallops. Okay, so they're allowed to dislike, and they don't have to eat a certain amount of foods. Okay.
Right. So I can't remember the exact number, but there's a finite number where everyone's allowed to have some foods that they dislike. The vegan program was born really because we saw a need in this population, right? While it's true that a lot of people that are vegan and have eating disorders have sort of gotten to the veganism by serially cutting out food groups, right? In an effort to restrict. But it's also true that there's a lot of people that are in recovery from an eating disorder that maintain their veganism. I think around 30%, at least 30% do. And so we saw that as a population that was really not being addressed and treated in the eating disorder community. So we created a vegan program. We have a questionnaire that we do, and we really truly try to understand the basis of their veganism. And we do try to honor it the best we can. Now, if they're not progressing in treatment, we will challenge them and at least put them on a vegetarian meal plan.
So in the same center, so if you're in Denver, then you can have 3 people who are vegan and 3 who aren't?
Correct.
So you would have chicken and meat or whatever. Okay.
That's right. So this is why we have a chef in each residential house, so that they can really tailor the meal plan to the clients. Yeah.
You know, I'm curious about the actual eating itself. Let's go to that for a second. So how many minutes do they have? Do they have a certain amount of time? They're sitting around eating, and what is it like at a meal?
Yeah, the meals are timed. So the meals happen in a living room. So we eat our food in a living room. We want to mimic healthy eating behavior. So in a living room right now, because of COVID, everyone eats behind plexiglass, even though they're all sitting at the table. They portion. So our clients self-portion their meal. We don't measure things. We don't use measuring cups or anything like that. But we have examples of, I don't know, a handful or palm size or baseball size, something like that for our servings. And then they sit down and eat. Meals are 45 minutes, snacks are 30 minutes.
Okay, and that's a long time. And there's a therapist there with them?
There's a direct care with them, at least a direct care. Our direct care are... they have college degrees and they are at the beginning of sort of their journey in the treatment of eating disorder. So they may become therapists or dietitians. It sort of depends. And then oftentimes there's other staff that eats with the client as well, such as therapists or dietitians. But they have at least a direct care with them.
Okay. And so they're not required to eat everything. I mean, if they serve themselves, they can serve as much as they want?
Well, so this is why we have staff that sort of watches and says, hey, that's probably not a baseball size. Let's add, let's add a little more. So even though they're self-portioning, they do have guidance on how much to serve themselves.
Okay. And so are there any common problems that come up, or I don't know?
There's yes, things like the portion size is sort of a constant, and this is why their staff right, looks at it and
Because they don't want to have to eat that much, right?
yeah, exactly. So this is why they're with us, and we have the
Exactly.
staff that we do to watch over them. Yeah.
All right. So suppose they finish the meal in 10 minutes, then they're probably not allowed to leave the room. Are they allowed to leave? Or, they have to be watched, I would imagine.
Exactly. So they stay in the room, and they usually chit chat with other clients or staff.
Okay. What's the age range? Or I guess it's all
So
over
we
the board.
take 18 and up. We don't take adolescents for now. 18 and up. The majority of the clients we serve are in their mid-20s.
Mid-20s. And then how many of them do you think it's their first time in treatment? Or I guess it's hard to come up
It's
with
a little.
number.
So a couple of things I can tell you. This goes along with the data that's been published on eating disorders. About 30% of our clients come back to treatment.
Okay.
So of the remaining 70%, anywhere between the first time with us versus first time in treatment in general.
And how long does the average person stay?
Our average length of stay through all 3 levels of care, I believe, is 62 days.
62 days. Okay. And insurance covers most of the costs
So we have
usually?
we have a whole department, a utilization review department that handles both the authorizations up front and then ongoing authorizations for the clients.
Okay, and these might be stupid questions, but I'm curious about like the dumb things, like what are you doing? What do they do all day when they're not seeing the therapist, eating a meal, or like in group therapy?
If you think about 6 groups, 6 meals a day, that's almost 12 hours. Then they have
Okay.
right. So then they have their one-on-one with the therapist, one-on-one with the dietitian. There's downtime. Time where they can have usually in the evening they can access their cell phone, watch TV, and just sort of turn off. In the morning, they spend at least an hour getting ready, showering, and getting dressed, so that they can participate in the program. We have a movement component to our movement dimension to our adaptive care model, and movement is part of their daily life. And that can look at like many different things, from sort of yoga, a walk on the beach in Monterey or Santa Barbara, a walk through a beautiful state park in St. Louis, just sort of depending on their activity level.
Okay, so if you're anorexic, you're unlikely to be necessarily allowed.
No. So when I first started in eating disorders, anyone that had anorexia and low body weight was automatically put on bed rest. And we actually learned that they do worse mentally and physically, right? Their bowels work less. So we do movement as long as the client is stable, in the sense of that, their vital signs are stable, their labs are stable. We let them participate in the exercise, in the movement,
All right.
dimension. And if someone has a BMI of 13 or 14, they may just walk around the block, or, certainly nothing strenuous. As they improve, as they physically get better, the activity level changes for them.
Right. Because that's where I was wondering, like, how much are they, to what degree can they exercise? Because a lot of people listening, if they're eating that much food that they don't want to eat, they were thinking, I have to exercise for 2 hours a day. So I suppose this is individually tailored, and nobody's probably allowed to exercise 2 hours a day. But the most strenuous then would be a walk. Like, do they have a gym?
Well, we do. So we don't do a gym per se, but we do have some movement sort of videos that they can do that gets their heart rate up a little bit. Yes, walking, yoga, a little bit of more intense yoga. At the IOP level of care, they have access to the gym and stuff. So we like to process what they're doing on their own when they're there.
Okay. One of the statistics that I heard, which was very surprising, was 40% identified as LGBTQ or so. Did I hear that right?
In our Alsana population?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a large population of LGBTQI that we serve. We have mixed milieux, so clients are assigned a couple things. Clients are assigned bedrooms based on the gender with which they identify. And we were very intentional about creating mixed milieus because the last thing someone who is in the LGBTQI population wants us to be segregated even more and sort of, put in a special class or special population. So our groups are mixed, our houses are mixed milieus. If someone is transgender, we honor whatever part of the sort of spectrum they're on, from something as simple as dressing to hormonal therapy and everything else that they're undergoing.
Interesting. Okay. Mm-hmm. What else do we want to talk about? Diet culture, social media. What these obviously would be topics that come up a lot, or what would be helpful, do you think, to tell to
cringe.
People? You cringe at...
I cringe when you said diet culture and social media. I mean, the effect we're seeing of social media on kids, adolescents, young adults, the college population is really quite scary. Mm-hmm. Actually, one of the first eating disorder conferences I went to, there was the editor-in-chief of some fashion magazine. I can't remember, Elle, Vogue, and he was like, "You guys want to see what models really look like?" And he's like, "What I do all day." And he said, "The models come in," and he said, I do the hair the way I want the hair, and I put them in the clothes I want to shoot them in." And then he says, "I sit at my computer and I, add the makeup and I trim the arms and I give them a little 6-pack and I, trim their cheeks." And so much of what we see is just fake and art. And, these people are literally killing themselves for something that not real.
Do you monitor social media there, or you don't really?
Yeah, so as much as we can, in the sense of we don't allow cell phones during the day. They have, I believe it's 1 or 2 hours at night where they can use cell phones. So during the day, there's no access to sort of the external world.
Don't you think society is changing a little bit in terms of the emphasis more on looking fit and strong, but that has its own set of problems? It's really social media problems in another form. So instead of the petite little tiny female that used to be the standard years ago, now it's different, but it's still based on appearance, right?
It's still appearance, exactly. There may be such a shift. Dove has done their campaign for a long time. I see a ton of pressure on, I see a lot of continued pressure on looking a certain way, which is the sort of thin ideal that we've been, shooting for many, many years.
And I would have to think that so much of the group therapy and all the therapy would have to connect with what do you really want? What are your values? Who are you as a human being? Underneath this thing we walk around life in, this body, who's there? What do you really want? All of that must be core.
For sure. So Betsy, one of the things that we do in our, as part of our adaptive care model, we've been intentional over the past about 6 months to really give a basis for a clinical model in compassion-focused therapy. So people that have eating disorders, so this is all new to me. I learned this over the last 6 months. people that have eating disorder, there's three flows of compassion. So there's the compassion you receive, the compassion you give, and then there's self-compassion. And people that have eating disorders are great at giving compassion to other people. They are very compassionate people. Where they tend to not be so good at is self-compassion and receiving compassion from others, right? So part of the work that they do with us is around compassion, is around like, who are you as a person? What do you want? Let people in, let people help you. And we've seen great improvement in their scores from admission to sort of step down or discharge.
That's great.
That's definitely part of the work that they do.
Yeah, let's talk about goals when people come in. What people would
our
learn.
goals for clients so that enter treatment. I mean, number one, to acknowledge how brave they are and courageous for even coming to treatment, right? Because that's a big deal. I mean, even filling out. So for someone to come in to Alsana, they have a master level clinician that does an assessment before they come in. They have to have a medical packet, and even going through that whole process can be so scary, right?
Absolutely.
Oftentimes, unfortunately, us medical providers have no training in eating disorders. So to have to go in and get weighed and have to listen one more time if someone's in a larger body, like, oh, you just have to lose weight, is just so traumatizing. So number one, to recognize how difficult it is and be so proud of them for even coming to treatment. And then two, goals for us is recovery, right? So what does recovered life look like for you? Maybe it's going to a restaurant with your friends and not freaking out over the calories and the salad dressing and the dessert and, celebrating a birthday, going on a trip. We want them to have individual goals that they can shoot for and attain for, all in the lens of living a recovered life. We don't focus on weight. Unfortunately, we do have to weigh the clients in part. We need those numbers to help justify more insurance days so that our UR department can, right? Our weights are blinded though when we do them. And we talk about trends, you had the hamburger, you didn't put on the 10 pounds that you thought you put on, so it's a lot of that kind of work. But yeah, the goals are individualized to what the clients want to achieve and to what their recovered life looks like. Now, if someone says, I want to have a recovered life and weigh 80 pounds, then, we have clearly therapeutic work to do with them.
Okay. And then you do field trips to go out to restaurants at the end?
That's right. We do experientials. With COVID, we have tamed that just for, infection prevention and control.
Well, you're still doing the COVID thing right now?
Well, we still are because, we don't mandate vaccination for our clients. And so when they live in a congregate, living facility, we just have to be mindful of everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Right. So how often would they go out to restaurants and at what point in their treatment?
Yeah, so it depends on the level of care. So for right now, for the residentials, they do a lot of experientials outside. So parks and picnics and things like that. PHP, IOP, they can go to restaurants. It depends on sort of the level, anywhere from once a week to about 3 times a week. They go to the grocery store as part of, how do I make a grocery list and go buy things for myself? So they do that as part of their therapeutic work.
Do you do any cooking or teaching cooking?
Yeah. Yeah, so this is in part why we have chefs at our facilities. They have, I believe, at least once a week, a client's creation meal. So a client picks a meal that they want to make, and the chef works with them on sort of the recipe and planning the menu and grocery list and all that. And then the client cooks, and everybody shares the meal.
So the client cooks for everybody they're living with, or?
That's right. That's right.
So do they have their individual bedrooms?
So most of our bedrooms, it's 2 people per bedroom.
Right. Okay.
So they usually have a roommate. We have some single rooms, but the majority of them have roommates.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So what do you do? One of the problems I've had with people who don't want to go have to do with the anorexia versus binge eating thing. They don't like the idea of being in group therapy or around that energy. So I don't know what there is to do about that.
I mean, this is, I think, where we do the bulk of our therapeutic work, in acknowledging that, eating disorders are a spectrum, and that, some people have anorexia, then they turn into binge eating and then purge, so it's all part
of the same fundamental core issue of
right,
I don't trust my body.
Exactly.
All of that, right.
Exactly. So those are the things that we work on.
Okay. Progressing from needing to be inpatient to, how do you know when it's time to go? Like, other than insurance.
Yeah, no. So we have several markers that tell us that clients are either ready for a step down or a step out, and they revolve around behavior, so frequency of behavior, stability of weight, stability of vital signs and labs. So it's sort of a combination of clinical and medical criteria that tells us that they're ready to either step down or step out.
Okay.
It's a traditional outpatient.
All right. I don't know. What else would be helpful?
No, I think just for, people that listen to you to know that there is help out there. And I think it's always important, if they have questions, to just reach out. Our admission line is open all the time, and there's always sort of a friendly ear listening. And so our counselors can help guide them to the right place. Maybe Alsana is not the right place. Maybe some people are battling substance abuse as well and need to go treat that first. Maybe whatever it is, if we're not the right place, we are really good about giving people referrals to either other facilities or other centers, outpatient providers, anyone else that can really help them through through whatever pathology they have.
How would someone know
that they need to go?
That I need to go get more help. I mean, everyone thinks they can fix it on their own. They want to be in control, but like, how many months or years of misery are you willing to endure before you throw in the towel? Right.
I certainly wouldn't want it to be years. I think if someone's been struggling with their behaviors for a few months and they are unable to they've shown that they're unable to do it on their own, they should at least call for help and see what they can do. And the other thing, Betsy, that I'm a big proponent of is it's always better to call and see if you meet criteria, because it's better for them to enter at the IOP level of care than have to go all the way to inpatient or medical stabilization because their disorders have gotten because their behaviors have gotten so out of control.
Right.
So to me, if someone's been struggling a month or two, just call and find out what kind of help is out there for you, what kind of level of care you could go to really stop the behaviors and just have a recovered life.
Right. It's like we are not meant to live this life
suffering
like that.
You can have a healthy relationship with food. You don't have to. You can have your cupcake. You can have your, I don't know, whatever it is, your salad dressing, and be healthy and not have so much anxiety and fear around.
Right.
And to just let go of constantly thinking about food and how to control it and, what the next meal is, and have so much, and be so tortured by it.
Right. It is torturous. That's right.
It definitely is.
And we end our interview there by mistake because, unfortunately, the very end when we said our goodbyes got cut off. So if you'd like to get more information about Alsana, you can certainly find that on the internet. And if you are not quite ready to go inpatient and are interested in working with me personally for any kind of eating issues, definitely go to my website, BetsyThurstonRD.com, if you want some more information. And that's it for today. I hope everybody enjoyed this. And until the next time, bye-bye.